The glass in my hand trembled slightly as I scrolled through my sister's latest Instagram post, the soft clinking against my wedding band echoing in the otherwise silent room. There, it was a perfectly curated snapshot of my family. 8 faces glowing under the soft golden light of my parents' dining room chandelier. My parents, my sister, her husband, my 2 brothers, their wives, and my grandmother all gathered around my mother's antique oak table, the one I helped refinish last summer. I felt a sharp, cold twist in my stomach. That table had been in my family for decades, and it had been my labor, my sweat that brought it back to life after years of neglect. I had stripped it, sanded every inch, and carefully restored it, applying layer after layer of warm, honey-toned varnish until it gleamed like a forgotten heirloom finally remembered. And there it was, gleaming in a photo that captured a moment I hadn't been invited to. 8 chairs around that table, 8 place settings, 8 wine glasses sparkling in the soft, ambient glow, 8 Christmas stockings visible in the background, each one hand-stitched by my mother over the years. My stocking, the one with the little snowman, and my name carefully embroidered in bold red thread, was missing. I knew that because I had embroidered it myself years ago as a teenager who still believed in family traditions. My thumb hovered over the screen, shaking slightly as I zoomed in on the details, praying for some mistake. Maybe my stocking was just hidden behind a poorly placed wreath, or perhaps it had been accidentally left out. But no, there was no mistake. My stocking, my place at the table, my very presence in this family gathering had been deliberately erased. A tightness formed in my chest, a pressure that felt like a physical weight pressing down on my lungs. I scrolled back to our family group chat. My last message, sitting alone, ignored the blue bubbles clearly marked as read by everyone. "Still good for Christmas Eve at my place, let me know if I should pick up the extra turkey," I had typed, trying to keep the tone light. I had even added a festive tree emoji. "Seen by everyone." No replies. I set my wine glass down with a dull clink against the granite countertop, the sound stark in the empty kitchen. Memories surged unbidden and raw. Last year's Christmas Eve, my brothers wrestling on my living room floor with their kids, my sister and I sharing a bottle of wine. As we gossiped about our parents, my mother slipping a tin of homemade cookies into my purse as I hugged her goodbye. I had been the one to host every major family holiday for nearly a decade, my home becoming the warm, chaotic heart of our family traditions. The messages had started to make sense now, the vague responses, the half-hearted commitments, the silent pauses on the phone. My sister's sudden interest in my grandmother's old ornaments, the ones I carefully wrapped in tissue paper each January. My brother's offhand comment during our last call. "You've been hosting forever, sis. Don't you want a break?" My father's cryptic remark about changing things up this year. I inhaled deeply, the sharp, piney scent of my half-decorated Christmas tree filling my nose. I had put it up last weekend, carefully hanging each ornament, untangling the mess of lights and positioning the tree just right in the bay window where it would glow warmly against the falling snow. I had planned the menu, bought the ingredients, even hand-folded the napkins into little poinsettia shapes. I wandered into the living room, my bare feet patting softly against the polished wood floors. My gaze landed on the fireplace mantel. 8 stockings perfectly aligned, each one representing a person I had loved and made a priority for years. My stocking, the one with the red snowman, hung in the center. The sight of it made my chest tighten even more. My phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the silence. A new message from my sister Emily. I hesitated before opening it. "Merry Christmas, sis. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. Miss you." I stared at the message, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. Miss me. Miss me while gathered around my table, eating my recipes, drinking from my crystal punch bowl. My pulse thudded loudly in my ears, each beat a sharp reminder of my exclusion. A bitter, quiet laugh escaped my throat, echoing off the polished marble counters. I set my phone down and glanced around my carefully decorated living room, the tree twinkling in the corner, the stocking swaying slightly as the central heating kicked on, sending a gentle, warm breeze through the room. If they thought I would simply smile and let this go, they had sorely underestimated me. I walked into the kitchen, the soft glow from the Christmas tree casting dancing shadows on the walls. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the cookies I'd baked last weekend, each one carefully decorated in red and green. I leaned against the cool marble countertop, my reflection in the stainless steel fridge catching my eye. A woman frozen in the dim light, eyes wide with disbelief. The pieces started to click together, each memory sharper now. My mother's sudden dismissive tone on our last call. my brother's unusually cheerful voice when I asked about his kids' favorite desserts, Emily's sudden obsession with Christmas decorations. It all felt like a carefully orchestrated betrayal, and I had missed every sign. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through our family group chat, rereading my messages from the past few weeks. The small blue scene indicators felt like tiny passive-aggressive punches. Me. Are we still doing our usual Christmas Eve dinner at my place? Seen by everyone. Me, I found a beautiful vintage tablecloth in the attic. Perfect for our dinner, seen by everyone. Me, should I pick up extra wine for everyone? Let me know your preferences. Seen by everyone. Not a single response. Not even a half-hearted emoji. I felt my jaw clench, the muscles in my neck tightening as a bitter realization crept in. They had planned this. They had quietly moved the celebration from my house to my parents' place, leaving me out entirely. I crossed the living room, my eyes drifting to the neatly wrapped presents under the tree, each one carefully labeled with my family's names. I had spent hours finding the perfect gifts, braving the holiday crowds and overpriced boutiques to make sure everyone felt thought of. I had even bought a new crystal decanter for my father, a nod to his newfound obsession with scotch tasting. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone again, this time pulling up my mother's contact. I hit the call button, the dial tone echoing through my otherwise silent house. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. A third time, the same impersonal chirp. I leaned against the wall, the cold, hard plaster pressing into my back as I felt my legs weaken. I sank slowly to the floor, the coolness of the hardwood seeping through my thin socks, grounding me in the moment. My mind raced through memories of past Christmases, the warmth of family gathered around the table, the shared laughter, the clinking of glasses, the late-night board games. All of it suddenly felt distant, like scenes from someone else's life. My phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a new text. It was Emily again. Mom said you might come by later if you're free. We're doing Secret Santa this year. Thought it'd be fun to mix things up? Love you, sis. Mix things up. My pulse thudded in my ears, the blood rushing to my head as a deep, simmering anger took root in my chest. They had moved the entire Christmas celebration without telling me and had the nerve to act like it was some spontaneous last-minute change. I stood up, my hand clenching into a tight fist. I glanced at the neatly wrapped presents under the tree, each one now feeling like a cruel joke. I had become a convenience, a backup plan. The reliable one who always made sure the stockings were hung and the table was set. I walked to the fireplace, staring at the stockings hanging in a neat row. My stocking, the one I had lovingly embroidered with my name, felt like a mockery now. I reached up, my fingers curling around the soft felt, and yanked it down with a sharp tug. The fabric tore slightly, a small rip near the snowman's hat, but I didn't care. I tossed it onto the floor, my breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. For a moment, I considered driving over to my parents' house, bursting through the front door and demanding an explanation. I imagined the look of surprise on their faces, the awkward silence, the fumbling excuses. I could see my mother's carefully maintained composure crack my father's brow furrow in confusion. My siblings glance at each other in guilty discomfort. But no, that would be too easy for them. Too simple. They didn't deserve to see my hurt, to witness the pain they had caused. If they wanted a Christmas without me, they would get exactly what they wished for. I straightened my back, the muscles in my shoulders relaxing slightly as a new, sharper clarity settled over me. I would not let them reduce me to a footnote in my own family. I would not be their afterthought, their forgotten Christmas stocking, their backup plan. I walked back to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and pulled up a travel site. New Orleans. A city alive with music, color, and chaos. A city where no one knew my name, where I could lose myself in the crowds, dance in the streets, and drink to forgotten memories. I booked the ticket without hesitation, a one-way flight leaving tomorrow morning. I tossed my phone onto the counter, watching it slide across the cool, polished surface, its screen going dark as it came to a stop. I walked back into the living room, took one last look at the stockings swaying gently in the warm breeze from the heating vent, and turned off the Christmas tree lights. The room plunged into shadow, the only light now coming from the street outside, casting long, twisted shapes across the walls. It was time to leave this place, these people, and these memories behind. It was time to choose myself. The suitcase thunked against the closet door as I dragged it into the center of my bedroom, its wheels catching slightly on the edge of the area rug. I flipped it open, the zipper catching for a second before giving way, the lid springing back to reveal the dark, empty interior. I crossed to my dresser, yanking open drawers with a sharpness that matched my mood. The crimson blouse I bought for a holiday party that never happened. The emerald silk scarf my sister once said was too bold for me. the white cashmere sweater my mother gifted me last year. Each piece fell into the suitcase like silent declarations of independence. My reflection in the mirrored closet door caught my eye as I moved, hair falling in loose waves around my shoulders, eyes sharper than I remembered. There was a fire there, a heat I hadn't felt in years. I moved to the bathroom, grabbing my makeup bag and the tiny glass perfume bottle I only wore on special occasions. I paused, my fingers tightening around the cool, faceted glass. It had been a gift from my grandmother the year I graduated college, a scent she had always said reminded her of her own wild youth. I tucked it into the side pocket of my suitcase, the soft clink of glass against fabric somehow comforting. Back in the bedroom, I zipped the suitcase shut, the sound loud and final in the quiet house. I dragged it to the front door, its wheels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floors. I paused by the fireplace, my eyes drifting to the bare spot where my stocking had hung just a few hours earlier. I hadn't bothered to pick it up from the floor, the crumpled fabric, a small silent rebellion against the weight of tradition. I straightened my chin, lifting slightly. I would not be their forgotten stocking, their missed call, their overlooked daughter. I would not be the background music to their perfectly posed family photos. The Uber app on my phone glowed in the darkness as I requested a ride, the estimated arrival time counting down in small glowing numbers. I grabbed my purse, slipping my phone inside my fingers, brushing against my wallet and passport. A sudden bitter laugh escaped my lips as I realized I hadn't even thought about coming back. I had booked a one-way ticket to a city I hadn't visited in years, with no return plans, no carefully structured itinerary, just an aching need to escape. The car arrived within minutes, headlights flashing briefly through the front window as it pulled up to the curb. I grabbed my suitcase, hesitating for just a second as I reached for the front door handle. I took a deep breath, the cool, crisp air of the house filling my lungs, tinged with the faint scent of pine from the forgotten tree in the living room. I swung the door open, the rush of cold December air hitting my face sharp and invigorating. I pulled the door shut behind me, the lock clicking into place with a satisfying finality. I didn't bother to leave a note, didn't bother to text my family. Let them wonder. The Uber driver, a young man in a Santa hat and a too cheerful grin, hopped out to help with my suitcase, his breath misting in the cold night air. He tossed the bag into the trunk with a casual, practiced motion before slipping back behind the wheel. Heading to the airport, he asked, as I slid into the back seat, the warmth of the car immediately fogging my glasses. Yeah, I replied. My voice steady, my hands clenching and unclenching in my lap as the car pulled away from the curb. The Christmas lights from my neighbors' houses flashing past the window in a blur of reds and greens. The drive passed in a haze, the city lights flickering by as we sped down the highway, the driver's tinny holiday playlist filling the silence. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, my breath fogging the surface as my mind drifted through memories of past Christmases, each one a little more painful than the last. We pulled up to the airport drop-off, the terminal bustling with last-minute travelers, their hurried footsteps echoing off the polished floors. I stepped out of the car, my suitcase clattering against the pavement as I adjusted the strap of my purse on my shoulder. I paused for a moment, glancing back at the bright lights of the Uber as it merged back into traffic, its taillights disappearing into the blur of cars streaming toward the terminal. I walked through the automatic doors, the rush of warm, recycled air hitting me as I stepped into the chaos of the terminal. I joined the line for check-in, my suitcase heavy beside me, the weight of my decision pressing down on my shoulders. When I finally reached the front of the line, the agent smiled up at me from behind her polished counter. Her dark red lipstick, a perfect match for the poinsettias scattered around the terminal. Flying alone today, she asked, her fingers tapping quickly on her keyboard as I handed over my passport. Yeah, I replied, the word tasting strange in my mouth like a secret I hadn't meant to share. She slid my boarding pass across the counter, her smile bright and genuine. Have a great flight and a Merry Christmas. I took the boarding pass, the thin paper cool against my fingertips, and slipped it into my purse. Merry Christmas. I murmured, my voice barely a whisper as I turned towards security, the sharp beep of the metal detector echoing in my ears as I stepped forward, my footsteps steady and sure against the cold, polished tiles. The flight to New Orleans was smooth, the plane cutting through the night sky like a blade, the world below lost in darkness and distant city lights. I spent most of the flight staring out the window, watching the wing lights blink rhythmically against the black void. My mind replayed the last few days, the betrayal, the subtle exclusion, the quiet unraveling of everything I thought I understood about my family. As the plane descended, the first hints of dawn bled across the horizon, soft purples and oranges brushing the edges of the clouds like the first strokes of a watercolor painting. I felt a strange tingling sensation spread through my chest, a mix of anticipation and fear. When we landed, the cabin lights flickered on, and the hum of the engines faded into the background as passengers reached for their bags and muttered into their phones, their voices rough with exhaustion. I grabbed my purse, slipping my phone out to check the time. My screen lit up with dozens of missed calls and unread messages, my family's names glowing in small, angry bubbles. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the notification bar before swiping it away. I slipped my phone back into my bag and stood stretching the stiffness from my limbs as I pulled my suitcase from the overhead bin. The airport was a blur of neon signs and weary travelers, the sharp smell of airport coffee mixing with the faint, lingering scent of jet fuel. I made my way to the exit, my suitcase bumping rhythmically against my leg as I navigated the crowded terminal. The doors slid open and the warm, humid air of New Orleans wrapped around me, like a sudden embrace, the sharp contrast to the cold, sterile air of the plane making me catch my breath. I stepped outside, the first hints of morning mist curling around the streetlights, the soft rumble of traffic echoing off the concrete walls of the terminal. I hailed a cab, the driver barely glancing up from his phone as he popped the trunk and helped me heave my suitcase inside. I slid into the back seat, the cracked leather cool against my bare legs as I gave him the address to my hotel. The city rushed past in a blur of neon signs, wrought iron balconies, and the slow, steady roll of streetcar tracks. I felt my pulse slow, my breaths coming easier as the cab wound through the narrow cobbled streets of the French Quarter, the echoes of late-night revelers still lingering in the morning air. The hotel rose ahead of us, a grand old building draped in strings of white Christmas lights that twinkled in the early morning mist. The driver pulled up to the curb, the car bouncing slightly as it hit the uneven pavement. I fumbled for cash, my fingers clumsy in my sudden exhaustion, and handed him a crumpled 20. "Keep the change," I muttered, sliding out of the back seat and reaching for my suitcase. The lobby was cool and dimly lit, the faint strains of jazz music drifting from a hidden speaker, the scent of polished wood and aged leather wrapping around me like a familiar hug. I approached the front desk, my suitcase wheels clicking softly against the polished marble floors. The desk clerk glanced up, her dark eyes bright against her carefully applied makeup. "Welcome to New Orleans," she said, her voice warm and lilting, checking in. "Yes," I replied, setting my purse on the counter and pulling out my ID. "I have a reservation." She tapped a few keys on her computer, her long, perfectly manicured nails clicking softly against the plastic. "Ah, here you are," she said, her smile widening slightly as she handed me a small white envelope with my room key. "We've upgraded you to a corner suite. Merry Christmas." I blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected kindness. "Thank you," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. She slid a small wrapped package across the counter, the paper a bright festive red with a tiny silver bow. "And this is from the hotel," she added with a wink. "A little something to welcome you to the city." I took the package, the smooth paper cool against my palm, and slipped it into my purse. The elevator ride to the third floor was short, the soft chime of the bell signaling my arrival as the doors slid open. I dragged my suitcase down the thick, carpeted hallway, the muted rustle of my wheels against the plush fibers oddly comforting. The room was beautiful. The tall arched windows overlooking a quiet side street lined with wrought iron balconies and swaying palm trees. I set my suitcase beside the bed, my eyes drawn to the small, neatly wrapped package I had slipped into my purse. I pulled it out, the paper crinkling softly as I unwrapped it, revealing a delicate silver fleur-de-lis pendant nestled in a small velvet box. I held it up to the light, the tiny, intricate details catching the soft glow of the bedside lamp. I felt a lump rise in my throat, the small, unexpected kindness catching me off guard. I slipped the necklace around my neck, the cool metal settling against my collarbone, a quiet, comforting weight. I walked to the window, the morning mist curling around the iron railings outside, the soft, distant strains of a saxophone drifting up from the street below. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me, the deep, soulful notes pulling at something deep inside me. For the first time in days, I felt the tightness in my chest loosen, the weight of my family's betrayal slipping away like the receding tide. I took a deep breath, the humid, salt-tinged air filling my lungs as I whispered into the empty room. "Merry Christmas to me." The first few days in New Orleans felt like a fever dream. The city buzzed with life, its heartbeat a steady pulse of jazz and street chatter, the air thick with the scent of beignets and spicy Creole cooking. I wandered the narrow streets of the French Quarter, my shoes clicking against the uneven cobblestones as I lost myself in the swirl of music and neon lights. My days were a blur of café au lait and powdered sugar. My evenings filled with the wail of saxophones and the low, rumbling laughter of strangers leaning over balconies, their voices drifting down like soft echoes in the humid night air. I felt my shoulders relax, my breath coming easier as the city wrapped itself around me, each brightly painted shutter and wrought iron railing a silent promise of freedom. I had breakfast at a small corner cafe, the kind with sticky wooden tables and ancient ceiling fans that creaked softly as they turned. The waitress, a thin, gray-haired woman with kind eyes and a thick New Orleans accent, filled my coffee cup without asking, her bony fingers wrapped around the chipped ceramic pot. "You look like you could use a fresh start, darling," she said. Her voice soft but steady as she set the pot down and wiped her hands on her apron. I looked up, startled, my fingers frozen around the warm ceramic mug. "Excuse me?" I managed my voice a little too sharp. She just smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling as she reached for the small dish of sugar packets on my table. "People come here for all kinds of reasons," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "Sometimes they're running from something, sometimes they're running to something. You strike me as the first kind." I opened my mouth to protest, to deny her words, but the truth caught in my throat, thick and bitter, like the strong black coffee cooling in my cup. "I guess you're not wrong." I finally admitted, my voice quieter this time. She nodded, her smile softening as she reached out and gave my hand a quick, gentle pat. "Well, this is a good place for a fresh start," she said, straightening and grabbing her coffee pot. "Just make sure you don't lose yourself in the process." She moved on to the next table, her voice drifting back to me as she chatted with an older couple near the window, their soft laughter mixing with the clink of silverware and the low, murmured conversations of the other patrons. I stared down into my coffee, the dark liquid rippling slightly as I set my cup down with a soft clink. I hadn't realized until that moment how lost I felt, how unmoored I had become in the chaos of my family's betrayal. I finished my breakfast in silence, the weight of her words settling over me like a second skin, as I slipped a crumpled 20 under my empty plate and stood my chair, scraping softly against the worn wooden floor. Outside, the sun had burned off the morning mist, the streets alive with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages and the soft, distant strains of a street musician plucking at a weathered guitar. I wandered through the French Quarter, my footsteps steady and purposeful as I lost myself in the maze of narrow alleys and brightly painted doorways. I found myself at Jackson Square, the towering spires of St. Louis Cathedral, casting long, cool shadows across the sun-drenched pavement. I slipped inside the cool, hushed air, a welcome contrast to the heat outside, the faint, lingering scent of old candles and polished wood, wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. I sank into one of the old, creaking wooden pews, my fingers brushing against the worn, polished surface as I stared up at the soaring, vaulted ceiling, my eyes tracing the intricate stained glass windows that filtered the morning light into soft, colorful patches on the stone floor. I closed my eyes, my head tipping back against the cool, hard edge of the pew as the sounds of the city faded into the background, replaced by the soft, rhythmic creak of the ancient wooden beams and the low, murmured prayers of the few scattered worshippers around me. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe, my chest expanding with each slow, steady inhale, the tightness in my throat loosening as I whispered a silent prayer for strength, for clarity, for the courage to face whatever came next. When I finally stood and stepped back into the bright, bustling chaos of the French Quarter, I felt lighter, my steps surer, my heart a little less fractured. I wandered back to my hotel, my suitcase still sitting in the corner of the room where I had left it, its wheels slightly crooked, the handle still extended like a silent invitation to leave. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my fingers brushing against the soft, crisp hotel linens as I reached for my phone, its screen lighting up with a long list of missed calls and unread messages. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over my mother's name, her contact photo, a faded snapshot of us from a long-ago summer vacation. Our arms wrapped around each other, our faces lit up with matching sunburns and wide, unguarded smiles. I tapped the screen, the line ringing only once before her voice crackled through the tiny speaker, sharp and panicked. "Where have you been?" she demanded, her words tumbling out in a rush, her voice high and strained. "We've been worried sick." I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the cool, smooth edge of the phone as I leaned back against the headboard, the soft, steady thrum of my heartbeat filling my ears. "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, my voice steady and calm, the words coming easier than I expected. "I just needed some time, for myself." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, the faint crackle of static the only sound as I waited for her to respond. "We didn't mean to leave you out," she finally said, her voice quieter now, the sharp edges softened with guilt and regret. "It just happened." I closed my eyes, the faint strains of jazz music drifting up from the street below as I let her words wash over me. Their weight familiar and yet somehow different now, less powerful, less suffocating. "I know," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet, dimly lit room, "but that doesn't make it okay." I hung up before she could respond, my finger trembling slightly as I set the phone back down on the bed beside me, the faint hum of the city outside my window filling the silence that followed. I leaned back against the cool, smooth headboard, my eyes drifting closed as the soft, rhythmic thrum of the street below lulled me into a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke the next morning to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the heavy brocade curtains, the muted sounds of street vendors and distant jazz drifting up from the cobbled streets below. I stretched the crisp, cool hotel sheets, sliding against my bare arms, the faint, lingering scent of lavender and old wood settling around me like a familiar embrace. For a moment, I lay there, my mind slowly shaking off the remnants of sleep, the events of the past few days swirling in a slow, hazy whirl. I reached for my phone, the cool glass screen bright against my eyes, as I blinked at the dozens of missed messages and unread emails still waiting for me. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the message icon, before swiping it away and setting the phone back down on the bedside table. I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed more time, more distance, more space to figure out who I was outside of the tangled web of family expectations and unspoken obligations that had wrapped around me for so long. I sat up slowly, swinging my legs over the side of the bed and stretching my arms above my head, my joints cracking softly in the quiet room. I padded barefoot to the window, pulling the heavy curtains aside and letting the full force of the morning sun spill into the room, painting the walls in warm golden light. The streets below bustled with life. The vendors setting up their carts, the street musicians tuning their battered instruments, the tourists snapping photos of the towering wrought iron balconies and brightly painted shutters that lined the narrow alleys of the French Quarter. I dressed quickly, slipping into the crimson blouse I had packed so hastily, its soft flowing fabric a bold contrast to the muted practical tones I had worn for so many years. I wrapped the emerald silk scarf around my neck, the cool, smooth fabric sliding against my skin as I tucked my room key into my purse and headed for the door. The hotel lobby was alive with the sounds of clinking dishes and the low murmured conversations of early risers sipping their first cups of coffee. I slipped out the side door, the cool morning air brushing against my cheeks as I stepped onto the cracked, uneven pavement of the narrow side street. I wandered aimlessly for a while, my footsteps echoing softly against the worn brick walls, as I lost myself in the twisted maze of alleys and side streets, the faint haunting strains of a saxophone drifting up from a nearby corner. I found myself back at Jackson Square, the towering spires of St. Louis Cathedral, casting long, cool shadows across the sun-drenched pavement, the air alive with the calls of street vendors and the soft, rhythmic clop of horse-drawn carriages. I slipped into the cool, hushed interior of the cathedral, the faint, lingering scent of incense and polished wood wrapping around me like a gentle embrace as I sank into a worn wooden pew near the back. I closed my eyes, my head tipping back against the smooth, polished surface as the sounds of the outside world faded into the background, replaced by the soft, whispered prayers of the scattered worshippers around me. For the first time in a long while, I felt a deep, abiding peace settle over me, the tightness in my chest loosening as I whispered a silent prayer for clarity, for strength, for the courage to continue choosing myself no matter the cost. When I finally stepped back into the bright, bustling chaos of the French Quarter, I felt lighter, my steps surer, my heart a little less burdened. I wandered back to my hotel, the sunlight warming my face as I slipped inside and made my way up the creaking, carpeted stairs to my room. I grabbed my phone, my fingers brushing against the cool, smooth glass as I unlocked the screen and scrolled through the long list of missed calls and unread messages. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over my mother's name, her contact photo still the same faded snapshot of us from that long-ago summer vacation. Our faces lit up with matching sunburns and wide, unguarded smiles. I tapped the screen, my breath catching in my throat as the line rang once, twice, 3 times, before her voice crackled through the tiny speaker, sharp and anxious. "Where are you?" she demanded, her words tumbling out in a rush, her voice high and strained. "We've been worried sick, you just disappeared." I closed my eyes, the faint strains of jazz music drifting up from the street below as I let her words wash over me, their weight familiar but somehow less powerful now, less suffocating. "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, my voice steady and calm. The words coming easier than I expected. I just needed some time for myself. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, the faint crackle of static, the only sound as I waited for her to respond. "We didn't mean to leave you out," she finally said, her voice quieter now, the sharp edges softened with guilt and regret. "It just happened." I took a deep breath, the cool, humid air of the hotel room filling my lungs as I leaned back against the headboard, the soft, steady thrum of my heartbeat filling my ears. "I know. I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet, dimly lit room. But that doesn't make it okay. I ended the call before she could respond, my thumb trembling slightly as I set the phone back down on the bed beside me, the faint hum of the city outside my window filling the silence that followed. I leaned back against the cool, smooth headboard, my eyes drifting closed as the soft, rhythmic thrum of the street below lulled me into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke again, the sun was sinking low in the sky, the soft golden light spilling through the window and casting long, twisted shadows across the polished wood floors. I stretched my muscles stiff and sore from the long day and pulled my suitcase out of the corner, its wheels clicking softly against the polished floor as I dragged it to the center of the room. I packed slowly, each carefully folded blouse and neatly rolled pair of jeans. A quiet, deliberate act of reclamation. A silent promise to myself that I would never again let someone else dictate my worth, my place, my value. I zipped the suitcase shut, the sound loud and final in the quiet room, and took one last lingering look around the sun-drenched space before grabbing my purse and heading for the door. As I stepped onto the narrow wrought iron balcony, the humid, salt-tinged air of the French Quarter wrapped around me like a warm, familiar embrace. The sounds of the city rising up to meet me as I whispered into the fading light. I choose me. Story 2. My shoulder hurts from carrying 8 weeks of existence through Denver International, and the keycard clicks in my apartment door lock. My home smells just how I left it. Lavender air freshener and coffee beans. But there's a problem. The afternoon sun catches Aunt Paula's pearl necklace as she stands in my living room. Welcome home, my love. Her smile is excessively broad, like a rubber band on the verge of breaking. I brought you a small item. My carry-on falls off my shoulder and hits the wooden floor with a thump. I know the silver border on the immaculate white envelope and her well-groomed fingers from the wedding planning web pages I saved months ago. We don't always write the best love stories. Sometimes life does. Please. The envelope quivers in my grasp. Inside sturdy cardboard is adorned with beautiful black writing. You are cordially invited by Kayla and Landon. My cousin's name rotates in the room next to my fiancé's. The day is getting closer to the date. In 3 months, I will already be holding my phone. Landon's contact is being pulled up by muscle memory. The call is unsuccessful. I give it another go. I'm told by a computer voice that the number has prohibited incoming calls. While you were away, he and Kayla came to understand that they were meant to be. Paula sits on my sofa. Last Christmas, Landon and I chose the sage green one. There's a reason these things occur. Every wall makes fun of me in our engagement pictures. Garden of the Gods with Landon. I laughed as he put his arms around my waist and threw back my head. At Winter Park, we were constructing a snowman. The ring is rose gold with my grandmother's diamond restored. I left it on my nightstand before my trip and it's still there. I had been worried that I might lose it during training. For your career, the certification program was crucial. Landon wanted someone there, but Paula's voice oozes honey-coated malice. Someone encouraging. I relived our 5 years together, including the anxious coffee date when he spilled his latte all over his khakis, our 2-year move-in together, and his old futon squeezed next to my IKEA furniture. Last April, he made a suggestion. Easy and ideal at our preferred breakfast location. When I informed him of Vancouver's project management certification program, he had appeared to be encouraging. As he assisted me in looking at apartments close to the training facility, he added, 8 weeks will fly by. We had previously reserved the Mountain Lodge for 100 guests on October 3rd. We had accumulated $18,000 in a savings account. The majority of it comes from my consultancy bonuses. Our final video conference. It was 2 weeks ago. Replays in my mind, his rambling responses and his hasty conclusion to the discussion. Your classes kept you quite occupied. Paula checks over her manicure. Landon felt left behind. Kayla got it. She works in the dentist's office part-time. Keeps respectable hours, you know. When he needed someone, she was there. The parts fit together like a hellish jigsaw puzzle. Paula's July cookout with the family. The shortening of Langdon's calls. His Instagram postings about unforeseen blessings and destiny are ambiguous and his texts are more irregular. The time was ideal. 3 clicks on my banking app on my open laptop on the kitchen counter confirm my suspicions. 4 months ago, Landon resigned from his engineering position. Never once was it brought up. Unlike you, Kayla won't leave him for a job. Paula straightens her linen trousers and gets up. She is aware of what is important in life. With silent finality, the latch behind her clicks. Surrounded by the life I believed I was returning home to, I collapsed to the ground. On the refrigerator, the future Mrs. and Mr. sign. The vendor contracts are crammed into the wedding planning binder. While giggling at my folly, we took a vacation shot. I pull the frames down one at a time, my hands shaking. In reverse, every good event turns into a lie. As it strikes the garbage bag, the snowman picture breaks. I close the final box of memories as the first rays of morning peek through the windows. With everything packed away, my spine straightens, but my eyes burn from sobbing. They are able to have one another. If someone can't even tell me the truth, I won't fight for them. I'm not going to fight for any of it. At 3 a.m., the phone rings. With the break of day, my stomach sinks as I see Mom's number appear on my screen. Unless anything is amiss, she never calls this late. Tonight, your father spoke with Paula. Decades of fatigue are reflected in her voice. You need to know anything about your aunt. I collapse on my sofa, surrounded by the partially packed boxes from my previous existence. What took place? Do you recall how I got to know your dad? The line is filled by a long pause. It was during the county fair when Paula first noticed him. She told everyone they were essentially dating for weeks. My fingers follow my grandmother's quilt's well-known design, although it wasn't. Not even close. At the Ferris wheel, she once waved at him. There's no comedy in Mom's chuckle. At the Harvest Festival when he asked me to dance. For months, Paula didn't communicate with me. Each link revealed a more repulsive image as the parts fit together like a jigsaw puzzle in reverse. Isn't she still punishing you via me? Just 6 weeks after your father and I were engaged, Paula wed Frank Thompson. She did it to prove something and everyone knew it. When Frank left Mom with 2-year-old Kayla, Mom's voice broke. She made rent with your father's aid. Since then, he has been sending her money each month. The space whirls. I reach for a pen because I require a firm grip. For 25 years every month. $500. Similar to clockwork. In the background, papers are rustling. Tonight, he finally stopped. Said that he would not contribute to his daughter's happiness being destroyed. I tighten my throat. Dad, calm and steady, who didn't ever speak loudly, who taught me how to balance my checkbook and replace my own tires, who even after my 28th birthday gave me a hug whenever I left the house. An hour ago, Paula arrived at the house. Mom's voice gets sharper as she demands that the wedding be joyful and claims that Kayla is the rightful owner. You owed them now for leaving Landon behind. In my hands, the pen cracks. My palm is covered with black ink that bleeds like a bruise. I left him behind. For a certification, I was away for 8 weeks. He urged me to get. Paula had Kayla bring him dinner 3 evenings a week while you were getting that certification. Invited him to get-togethers with relatives. She made sure we were unaware of it. Mom's tone becomes stern. Since the day your father chose me, she has planned everything, including this, my love. My chest aches with the burden of ancestral scars. Every disparaging remark regarding my profession. Every analogy between my career goals and Kayla's conventional choices. At family get-togethers, Paula always referred to me as the busy one. A grin curled her lips, but it never made it to her eyes. Tonight, your father told her something. It has been 30 years since I wanted to say it. Mom's voice is a combination of pride and grief. You didn't lose Bob because of Margaret, he remarked. You lost him because you didn't see him as a person to be loved, but rather as a prize to be one. My cheeks well up with tears. Not for Kayla, not for Landon, and not for the life I believed I was creating to endure the decades of poison. Paula's resentment of the little girl she had brought up to be a weapon rather than a person was reflected in our family tree. I have a pal. Before I can stop them, the words flow out. Sarah from the consultancy company. In Seattle, she has an extra room. Seattle. Mom catches her breath. So far, so good. Right now, I need distance. I gaze at my apartment's walls, which are still splattered with remnants of a past that vanished while I was pursuing my goals. I've applied for jobs there already. How about the wedding fund? My bonuses accounted for 80% of the sum. I steady my voice. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to close the account. Paula is going to go crazy. Permit her. The phrases convey assurance rather than fury. I've finished bearing the consequences of a conflict that began before I was even born. In my front door, a key rattles. Before Dad's recognizable bulk fills the doorway, I pause, my heart racing. He has crimson eyes. When Dad sees me on the couch with my phone up to my ear, his silver hair rumples. He takes 3 steps across the room and hugs me, his scent a mix of safety and Old Spice. He declares, I have her loud enough for his mother to hear. Dad, I'll bring breakfast home. His flannel shirt is pressed against my face. I'm so sorry. No. He rumbles his chest into my ear. There's nothing to apologize for. Years ago, I ought to have witnessed what Paula was doing. When she first attempted to compete with your mother, you should have taken that money away. Via Kayla and you, I received an offer of employment. In Seattle, my voice is muffled by his shirt. In 2 weeks, they want me to start. He clenches his arms. We'd best go packing then. However, what about Kayla, Paula, and every other wedding guest? Dad gently places his hands on my shoulders and pulls back. The silver threads in his beard catch the lamplight. Signs of time. Somehow, I didn't show up. I'll take care of the visitors with your mother. He clenches his jaw at Paula. Some individuals contaminate the water for so long that they lose the ability to drink anything else. I'm not seeking retribution. I'm surprised with the reality. All I want is to get rid of it all. Then we will offer you that. He takes a big packet from inside his jacket. However, I believe you should read this first. Statements from banks cover my coffee table. Paula Thompson received 30 years' worth of canceled checks. Notations in the meticulous handwriting of my father. Payments for rent. Auto repairs. Kayla's braces. Camps during the summer. Costs for applying to colleges. I recorded everything. The voice of Dad. Ruffin believed that I was assisting her in creating a life that I never witnessed. I was only paying for her retaliation. A final remark for services provided in destroying my daughter's happiness is on the last check, which was dated 3 days ago. The payment ceased. I feel the calluses from decades of building labor as I reach for his hand. I learned how to ride a bike from the same hands who constructed my treehouse as a youngster, supported me through every heartbreak and bruised knee. Thank you. My voice breaks. For picking me, for picking Mom. Every single day, child, his fingers get tighter around mine. Each and every day. Denver's lights sparkle like falling stars outside my window. The account that was meant to finance my wedding package will be closed tomorrow. I created this existence in boxes. Cite personal circumstances in your letter of resignation. But tonight, I allow myself to feel the weight of 3 generations of women's decisions as I lean against my father's firm warmth. Paula's pride was bitter. Kayla's deliberate treachery, the calm power of my mother, my own strength. Released at last from the prison of familial duty. Seattle is in 2 weeks. Until a city where nobody is aware of my name or the significance of the past, I've decided to settle down, where I have the opportunity to create my own tale every morning, free of the specter of a long-standing rivalry that I never asked to inherit. I close my eyes and inhale the scent of confidence and Old Spice. Tomorrow won't be long. Tonight is the night of healing and truth, and the unwavering pulse of love without conditions. Weeks become months and days become weeks. And now, after 3 months, the constant cadence of the Seattle rain tapping against the windows of my flat has grown more reassuring than depressing. From my little container garden on the balcony, stretches of Puget Sound. Under dense clouds, gray and unending whitecaps dance. The unfamiliarity of this vista frightened me 3 months ago. There is a hint of potential now. At 6, my alarm goes off. I get grounded by the morning routine. My new toaster's finicky settings are still a mystery to me, so the toast is slightly burning while the coffee is boiling. I can see resolve replacing the black rings in my eyes as I quickly gulp my reflection. I already have the Vancouver accreditation mounted on the wall of my Marshall consulting office. Evidence that sometimes fleeing entails fleeing in search of something better. I leave for work. At the morning meeting, Roger declares that the Wilson account needs new eyes. A heavy folder was slid across the conference table. You've dealt with similar logistical issues before, Brooke. My back straightens. Indeed. Several parallel situations were discussed in my certification program. Now the words come steadily. Expert. Nobody here is aware of Landon. Regarding Kayla and the wedding that ought to have taken place last month. They just know me as the driven new employee who consistently stays late and produces results before the deadline. Roger nods and proceeds to the next item on the schedule. However, I see Sarah from accounting looking at me favorably. Little successes add up. I'm at the Global Flavors cooking class on Thursday nights, slicing veggies next to people I didn't know before but have now made friends with. We're trying Thai food tonight, and the industrial kitchen smells like ginger and lemongrass. Chef Marcus shows the right approach by gently correcting the knife angle. My grandmother taught me how to bring order out of chaos throughout decades of Sunday meals, and my hands still recall those teachings. One clean cut after another. On the screen of my laptop, the cursor blinks. Dr. Sharon's weekly treatment assignment is due later that evening. Examine how your family approaches connections across generations. I write about Kayla's taught helplessness, Aunt Paula's desperate hold on status, and my own past impulse to solve everyone else's issues while disregarding the warning flags in my own life. My focus is disrupted when my mother texts me. Facebook is flooded with pictures of Kayla and Landon's wedding. Do you want me to give you a call? Not necessary. Working on the Wilson proposal. I type back. It's not a complete falsehood. Beside me, the folder is open. Logistics and numbers. A pleasant diversion from the past. My phone doesn't turn on. Mom finally gets it. She knows when to press and when to give me space to think. From tearful admissions to real talks, the weekly Sunday calls have changed with time. We talked about her garden restoration for an hour last week, and we didn't bring up the elephant in the room once. Over the course of 3 restless nights, the Wilson plan comes together. Projections and graphs are at my fingertips. Clear and keen insights. Roger's brows raise at the creative solutions I've planned out when I present to the client team. Very good work, he remarks afterwards. Normally, the promotion track takes a year, but we may need to shorten that period. My face lights up with a sincere smile. It feels natural in the bathroom mirror for the first time in months. Later, when I'm washing my hands, I notice that I'm humming. I'm startled into stillness by the sound, but it's a momentous occasion. 10 full hours, without considering the treachery. On the weekends, Lucy from Formby joins me for walks. Sucks. Our feet lead us down meandering pathways and through discovery parks. She is 65. Just lost a spouse, filled with tales about 1970s Seattle, when she discusses recovering from a loss. Experience, not sympathy, is the source of her knowledge. It's been 3 years since my Harold left. One foggy morning, she tells me, I still reach for him in bed on certain days. However you discover how to create a life in the voids, when I eventually tell the whole tale, everyone in my grief support group nods. Nobody gives hollow platitudes or advice. All they do is listen, and in some way, I really need it. Marcus remarks afterwards, you're handling this with remarkable grace. Last year, his wife left him for their business partner. He understands. 6 months ahead of schedule, the promotion letter is delivered. The team leader has a corner office with a view of the noise. I schedule flights for the next weekend and email a picture to my dad and folks. Mom sends home family pictures from decades before the betrayal and freshly made cookies. Through the family grapevine, we make new memories in my little kitchen while giggling about Dad's attempts to become proficient with chopsticks at the neighborhood sushi restaurant. News comes in. Landon is still unable to get employment as a writer. Their rent is barely covered by Kayla's part-time work as a dental receptionist. They now reside with Paula. Her tiny ranch home was packed with 3 people who shared the one bathroom. They are worthy of one another. Rachel. My cousin is always ready to share family rumors via text. I don't read her message. I no longer find delight or agony in their hardships. They are only facts, like the rain in Seattle or the nighttime traffic in the morning. I water my burgeoning plant collection, which includes a temperamental peace lily near my desk, succulents in my bedroom, and herbs in the kitchen. Green objects that, depending on the care they get, either flourish or perish. No complicated feelings, no ulterior motives. Just progress that is sincere. One leaf at a time. My therapy diary is brimming with observations on boundaries established and patterns broken. I've stopped apologizing for my job goals, which is one way that Dr. Sharon observes my development. The finest kind of retaliation is success, after saying that she stops herself. However, I think that you have a history of seeking retribution. She is correct. There is no longer a lady who left Denver in a U-Haul full of crushed dreams and a broken heart. Someone stronger is standing in her place. Someone who knows it's not cowardice to leave a harmful situation. It's bravery. The sound of rain hitting my windows has turned into a soothing melody. Uncertain evenings. The city lights and stars are reflected in the music. A reminder that even amid the shadows, beauty may be found. I no longer use social media. Ceased inquiring about domestic news. In the gloomy sky and verdant parks of Seattle, in the quiet victories and serene mornings, my tale is being written itself. Memories of the land still catch me off guard some evenings. He laughed while eating breakfast. After exhausting days, he would give me bear embraces. However, those times are now less common. In the light of my reconstructed life, the ghost is disappearing. A 5-year romance ended in treachery, helped me learn more about who I am, more than a lifetime of simple joy ever could. Next to the Vancouver accreditation, I tacked the chronology of my team's first successful project to the wall of my office. Evidence that going away is sometimes necessary to move forward. In filtered sunshine, the corner office layouts flourish, expanding and green as they look to the future. Like a smack, the email flashes on my screen. After 7 months of stillness, seeing Landon's name in my email makes my coffee mug shake against my Seattle apartment's breakfast bar. Our wedding fund is the subject. I know it's difficult, but I have to talk to Brooke about our shared savings. That money was intended for both of us, and we are now in a hard spot. I never intended for any of this to transpire in this manner. Simply said, circumstances took control. I'm not getting the money I expected from writing. Kayla's hours were also reduced by her dentist practice. Next month, we might be evicted. I hate to ask, but in order to maintain our roof over our heads, I need my portion of the wedding cash. After all, it was our money. Help Landon, please. I go over his message 3 times while the fall rain beats down on my windows. Every syllable has a deeper impact than the last. Our funds. As he departed his engineering career, my consulting bonuses helped to build that account. Not a word. Situation. He seemed to be thrust into my cousin's arms by an unexplained power. I didn't touch the keyboard for 3 days. With surgical precision, the words flow. The funds were intended for our future. The day you abandoned me and wed my cousin, you forfeited that. Don't get in touch with me again. I move my finger over the send button. No rage, no charges, just the facts, as clean as broken. Bone, click, block, completed. Mom's voice crackles over my phone 2 weeks later. Kayla and Landon arrive to the residence with Paula. The wedding funds are being demanded. What, it's being handled by your father? I'll give you a call back. Hours pass slowly. Before my phone buzzes once again, the skyline of Seattle changes from steel gray to purple twilight. This is something you must hear. According to Mom, Paula began yelling about the young couple's legitimate property. While they waged his war, Landon stood there looking at his shoes while Kayla broke down in tears over bill collectors. I let out a sour chuckle. They thought they would be supported by my savings, and that's only the beginning. Mom's tone becomes stern. At last, your dad lost it. Informed Paula that he had stopped giving her payments each month. Checks every month since her divorce, $500 every month. She was enabled for 28 years. Oh, he said. You used the kindness of my family to destroy my daughter. He replied, staring her in the eyes. I can still hear the truth in their words. What was the number of times Paula had arrived at their door with another crisis? To maintain harmony within the family, how many checks had they written? Paula fell into her sofa. Mom went on to cry as she talked about how life never gave her a fair shot, how she was broken and never really recovered after witnessing me marry your father, how it felt like history was being repeated to watch you flourish while Kayla struggled. My throat gets constricted. She made me pay for your joy. She never lost anything I told her. She was never fair. Mom's voice conveys decades of understanding silence. She controlled every circumstance and made every family get-together into a contest. And if that wasn't enough, she took what she believed I had taken using Kayla. That night, the family group text blows out and Susan takes Paula's side. Jennifer, a cousin who was betrayed by Uncle Robert, brands Kayla a homewrecker. Grandmother Ruth says Thanksgiving will not be held. A fresh message from an unidentified number appears. Did Mom really plan this, Kayla? Did she intentionally push me in Landon's direction? He no longer writes at all. Just engages in video gaming while working. All I received were his unfulfilled promises, but perhaps she wanted me to have what you had. I didn't reply, so I closed them. Allow karma to complete what it began. Rain continues to pour in Seattle. removing a further layer of rage. I was unaware that I was still carrying. I'll get up, make my coffee, and conduct my team meeting tomorrow. I'll feel a little lighter after joking with my coworkers and grinning at the barista. My account's funds are no longer polluted. It is neither a sign of treachery nor a wedding fund. It's liberty. As I create a life they cannot touch, karma is working slowly and steadily. Dad could be correct. Kindness may occasionally turn into disaster when we allow our fear of conflict to influence our decisions. The simplest solution is sometimes the most difficult. Not anymore. The notice of eviction flutters in the fall wind. The red letters stand out sharply against the white paper that my mother's weekly updates tacked to Paula's front door. I find out that before the rent check began to bounce, they lived in the Victorian townhouse for 3 months. In Aurora, Kayla, Landon, and Paula now live in a 2-bedroom walk-up where sirens are played every night. At Target, he stocks shelves. On our Sunday call, Mom says, "Now." Her tone conveys the cautious objectivity she saves for challenging subjects. Early shifts. Last week, he was spotted wearing the red vest. I watch the amber liquid swirl as I concentrate on adding honey to my tea. Morning light streams into my Seattle apartment, which is spotless and bright. "Sweetheart, what about his writing career?" Mom hesitates. I don't believe one ever existed. The words subtle like stones. 5 years of listening to Land and talk about his novel, the characters who lived in his head, the literary agent who loved his work if he could just finish it. All excuses to avoid looking for real work while he supported us, while I believed in him. Their arguments echo through family gossip channels. Kayla screaming about broken promises in the Walmart parking lot. Landon's bitter accusations at Thanksgiving dinner about being pushed into a fantasy life. Paula's constant presence in their tiny apartment driving final wedges between them. "Remember when your father proposed to me instead of Paula?" Mom's voice softens with old memories. She married Tom Richardson 2 months later. Never loved him. Just wanted to prove she could get her husband too. A familiar story, but the parallels strike harder now. Tom left after 3 years. Paul has been chasing security through other people ever since. I watch a ferry cut through Puget Sound sunlight, sparking off waves. Did she ever apologize to you? No. Mom's laugh holds no bitterness. Paula doesn't apologize, she justifies. The truth of this plays out in real time. Paula starts calling relatives, voice thick with tears, asking for loans. When they refuse, she tries. "My grandparents." Their response travels through the family grapevine with lightning speed. "Not until you apologize to Brooke." Grandma Ruth reportedly said, and mean it. My father's monthly support checks to Paula stopped. He'd sent them ever since her divorce. $500 of guilt. Money paid in silence while she slowly poisoned our family bonds. The seclusion hurts Paula most. Thanksgiving invites dry up. Christmas card lists shrink. Family members stop accepting her calls. Meanwhile, my own quiet success speaks volumes. Team leader at 28. A corner office with a view. Respect earned through work rather than manipulation. Your cousin's starting to see it. Mom tells me one Sunday Kayla mentioned going to therapy. Says she's recognizing patterns from childhood. I think of Kayla's tearful face in old photos. Paula usually had her hand on her shoulder. The relentless push to succeed at all costs, to compete and to be flawless. Well done. On a soggy Tuesday, the phone call that makes all the difference occurs. As I listen to Kayla's stuttering voice, my boyfriend James offers me tea, all her sharp edges sanded down by humility. "I knew it was wrong," she says. "I let Mom convince me I deserved your life more than you did. That if I just played my cards right, I could have everything you worked for." Her breath catches. "I'm so sorry, Brooke. Not because I need anything from you, just because you deserve to hear it." I watch James move around my kitchen starting dinner prep. His quiet strength, his respect for my boundaries, his understanding of healthy love. Everything Landon promised, but never was. "Thank you for telling me," I say finally. "I hope you find peace, Kayla, far away from anyone who makes you doubt yourself." She leaves for Florida the next month. A clean break, a fresh start. Landon returns to engineering his creative dreams. Deflated, but his feet finally on solid ground. Paula sits alone in her apartment writing letters I'll never read. In the spring, the first one shows up at my parents' place. The next month. Mom explains the meticulous penmanship. The border of silver resembles a wedding invitation. She blames her mother's circumstances, but she never speaks about her own decisions. Return to sender. I tell her certain doors need to stay closed. James finds me on the balcony that evening, wrapped in the quilt my grandma sewed. He doesn't inquire about the letter or offer platitudes about forgiveness, just holds me while I watch the city lights blur through tears. I didn't expect to shed. You don't owe them closure. He murmurs into my hair. There is nothing that you owe them. But I found my own closure. In this tranquil life I've constructed in the family I've chosen, the boundaries I've set, the calm I've gained via stepping away. Some bridges burn for a purpose. New ground is fertilized by their ashes, where things can grow healthier. I remove Landon's final picture from my phone later that evening. It's because I now understand, not because I'm angry or hurt. Closing the door and leaving is perhaps the most self-compassionate thing we can do. As we create something greater, let karma keep things in balance. Below my window is a city teeming with opportunities and loves. Paula sits alone with her explanations somewhere in Aurora. Without her mother's voice in her thoughts, Kayla discovers who she is in Florida. In Seattle, I observe the fairy lights that resemble stars, at last without having to interpret any of it. Some lessons are pricey, but they are well worth the investment. I must remain at peace for another 2 years. Warm shadows are thrown on faces I've come to love by the string lights that glitter over our back terrace. The aroma of Linda's pumpkin bread and James's renowned apple cider wafts through the open French doors into Seattle's fall air. This life has been meticulously constructed over the course of 2 years, and everything feels finished tonight. Mom puts her wine glass down and puts both of her arms over my shoulders. You look good in this house, my love. Her gaze strayed to the wall where a candid picture of James and I is displayed next to my team leadership award. Mount Rainier hike. No false promises, no wedding photographs. Only genuine moments. True and hard-earned. The bell on the door rings. With her husband holding a potted flower and shouting over the ruckus, Sarah from accounting comes. These individuals are unaware of Kayla Landon or betrayals in the family. They are aware of my current self. The lady in charge of important initiatives creates a delicious chocolate souffle and helps at the literacy center. At dessert, Dad's phone buzzes. His demeanor transforms as he reads the message, and I know before he speaks. News from home travels fast. Kayla and Landon's divorce was finalized yesterday, he explains gently. Next month, she will be relocating to Boston to work as a teacher at a private school. With firm hands, I pass him the coffee pot. I'm hoping she'll find what she's seeking. There is no resentment in the words. When losing everything brought me to this point, how could they? I was driven into a life far richer than the one I had intended by that betrayal. After the final visitor has left, I discover Kayla's email sitting in my inbox. There's something in the subject line, but my finger is hovering over delete. At last, truth causes me to halt. She writes, I owe you an explanation. I let Mom to plan everything out. Because it would imply that my mother's aspirations for me would finally come true, I wanted to think that Landon was my soulmate. There was never a fit between us. From the beginning, the marriage was a mistake. I'm not pleading for pardon. All I wanted was for you to know the truth. That evening, James discovers me on the balcony covered in the plush throw blanket he got me for my birthday. I lay back against his chest as he wraps his arms around my waist, seeing the water's flickering lights. Thank you for sharing your ideas. He slams his voice into my shoulder. Kayla sent an email. In Boston, she is making a fresh start. I looked over at him. She said she was sorry. In a way, what are your thoughts about that? I think about the query. It tastes like wine. Calm. I'm no longer burdened by her decisions. Without prodding, he nods in understanding. This man who builds furniture in our garage and reads history books before bed came into my life when I had given up on finding love. He recognized that diamonds held too many memories, so he proposed with a simple sapphire ring. Speaking of options, he continues, I've been considering the guest list for our wedding. My mouth twitches. I'll guess. You want to know if Kayla should be invited? I had the thought. You seem lighter now that you've read her email. Reunion is not a prerequisite for forgiveness. On his forearm, I trace the anchor tattoo. I want the best for her, but that is the end of that chapter. The phone rings 2 weeks later. Dad once more. His tone makes my heart tighten. Paul is in the medical facility. Aggressive breast cancer, he says. Your mom believed you ought to be aware. The previous version of me would have quickly booked a flight, hastily arriving at a bedside where I was not welcome. However, I now understand limitations and the distinction between martyrdom and compassion. I assure him I'll send flowers, the nice kind she always boasted about from that store. After the supper, I hung up. James and I watched the moon paint silver pads over the ocean while we stood at the railing that same evening. I'll order the flowers tomorrow. Surrounded by those who have earned their place in our tale, I will begin organizing our little wedding tomorrow. I'll give Mom a call tomorrow to discuss some of the insights we've both acquired on ending hurtful patterns. But I cherish this time tonight. James's warmth at my side, the life that we are creating, the silent assurance that sometimes all is lost, demonstrates just what you must maintain. There's a hint of wood smoke in the wind. Down the hill someplace. I shut my eyes, inhaling the aroma of fall and opportunity. There are some teachings that are absolutely necessary and are well worth the investment.